This comparison was taken with beyond reference accurate settings. So here I'm going to show you filmmaker mode to show you what that looks like. Filmmaker mode here, this is what it looks like before my beyond reference accurate settings. This is what it looks like with my beyond reference accurate settings. Again, this is not a stock comparison. One more time for dramatic effect, before my reference accurate settings, again, you can snag these in the link below. Before, you can see filmmaker mode. This is what you get out of the box. And this is what I take it to. So if you want to see what I have here, make sure you snag my beyond reference settings below.
So when we talk about the Hisense U8G versus the U8H, the most important thing is both TVs are great. You walk away a winner. It comes down to a question of, do you pay more money and get a little bit more in some areas than others, or do you save a buck and get almost the same experience but miss out on a couple features? So let me elaborate a little bit further by talking about black levels. That by far is going to be the biggest takeaway from this entire comparison. It is a win for the Hisense U8H in that regard. Black levels, I don't care what you look at, are going to be more crisp, more pronounced. They're going to look better on the U8H. The U8G just isn't able to pull that same level. However, it's not so far behind that looking at it, you're like, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing I've ever seen. Now, my camera can't show every ounce of dynamic range off, but it does have more instances where it shows blooming and even what would appear to be like faint clouding in some areas on very complex geometry. But again, you really have to sit there pixel peeping to find that. It is not a normal thing, and it is very hard to find that. Now, again, if you're blasting off at like 100%, maybe it's a lot easier to see blooming and haloing and stuff like that on the U8G, but that's where the U8H kind of comes in as well. If you want to use max brightness, full on 100%, it does a better job of holding the black levels than the U8G does. And the U8H really, with black levels, I'm not joking, is the one thing you are going to love about this TV. It feels so OLED-esque without the risk of burn-in that it's almost a no-brainer just for that alone for anyone looking for a better dark room experience. So now let's talk about brightness, because they both boast having over 1500 nits. Now, both over-deliver. However, the U8H does such a better job in terms of luminosity. It just adds that extra immersion and color volume, unlocking some shades of color that the Hisense U8G just is not capable of. However, that's where things get a little tricky though, because just because you have a wider color volume doesn't mean your color gamut is necessarily performing at the same level. I've seen instances where the U8G actually has a better representation of gradations than the U8H. So it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, sure, your colors are more vibrant and you have a little bit more throw behind it because of luminosity, but you're missing fine-tuned gradations, which does affect landscapes, sunsets, things like that. And it gets to a point where you're watching all this play out and you're like, am I really seeing an upgrade if that's better, at least in that particular aspect? And so you kind of have to make your own determination for yourself in that regard. But for me, I even brought my wife in and we went back and forth looking at these two TVs, and we were actually split. I was for the U8G for most of the things that I saw, and my wife was actually for the U8H. And that let me know right there, this TV is very preferentially based. Okay, you are going to be one of two people. The Hisense U8H tends to trend more towards a cooler color temperature, but some people really like that. I tend to like warmer color paletteries because they open up a lot of what's called additive color, like yellow, magenta, cyan. Those things look better and stronger, and they gradate better with warmer color palettery, where on cooler color palettery not so much, but you get crazy vibrancy. So it gets hard because you have to go back and forth and kind of play this game, and I just find myself in the weirdest predicament, honestly, where it's like I love the U8H's color, but I just wish they did the same thing that they did on the U8G. So for color, I'm gonna have to give it to the Hisense U8G, but that can change depending on who you are and what you're looking for. In terms of motion, neither pull ahead of the other one. I've had moments where the U8G actually looks smoother than U8H and then back and forth. So they're pretty much a tie as far as motion goes. So I wouldn't get too hung up about figuring out which one is the better motion TV. Both are pretty solid. However, if I'm being a little more than honest and I'm giving my opinion here, I do feel like the U8H is literally like a hair better because of their I guess, way of going about motion this year. It's just slightly better. But again, they're pretty comparable in that aspect. Now, the reason I say this is because when watching over-the-air TV like, WWE or something like that, which is notorious for terrible motion, the U8H did manage to have that cleaner, smoother motion where the U8G did not have that. So that's where like the U8H kind of stood out a lot more. But then when we get into more of the video gaming aspect, the U8G kind of pulled ahead a little bit for some games like Spider-Man. So it's weird, and it's one of those things where it's like if you're watching TV, the U8H is going to be better for watching TV. Especially because when we talk about upscaling, the upscaling capabilities on the U8H are just better. Fact. YouTube videos look better. Everything is just sharper and clearer because of that mini LED, I believe. That's really what's doing it. I don't really feel like processor-wise, Hisense has arrived yet. I think that's the one area now that they're incredibly weak on and have to improve on. You still have all kinds of problems with banding, and I think that's going to be seen a lot for a lot of people. If you don't like banding, this is not the TV to get, right? It has that. You will have dirty screen effect, right? So comparatively to the U8G still has all those things too. And so they're kind of on an equivalent playing field from that aspect. And now it gets to the hard question, am I really getting more of an upgrade or not? And again, that's going to kind of come down to your usage, whether or not you see the difference. Now, in terms of the overall experience, we're talking about feature set, design, everything that like people look for. I find myself kind of giving the win to the Hisense U8H because the U8H does a good job of not necessarily holding itself back by taking itself too lightly, and it delivers what I would call a true mini LED experience. It's not gimmicky like Sony with the X90K or Samsung with the QN90B. You have extreme minimal blooming, and by minimal, it's pretty much not there. I haven't been able to replicate any blooming, and I've thrown my hardest stress tests at it, and it is dominated. I have not seen that for like ages on a television, and never at this price point, which of course is going to go lower as time goes on. We get to Black Friday and things like that. You're totally going to see a good deal on these TVs. And my thing is, when you have a TV that has such good response time, such good black level, such excellent sound, I mean, it is a win for the Hisense U8H. However, again, the message is not that the U8G is bad. The message is that the U8G is almost there. I'm telling you, you got 90% of the picture quality of the U8H on the U8G. This is basically a U8G with enhancements. It's not enough to be like something new, like, oh my God, it broke the mold, it's its own thing. But it's enough to be like, wow, this is incredible in its own right. And it does so much incredibly right. Now, when we talk about design, you have to keep in mind that like, it's a new thing, I guess, and they're doing their own thing, but I feel personally as though the design is a bit of a downgrade and upgrade at the same time. So the U8G has a super luxurious design, corner to corner, bezel to bezel. You've got chrome, you've got brushed metal. It's really luxurious. The U8H is cheap. It has plastic, it has fewer chrome trimmings. It's not exciting design-wise. It's very basic, and it looks more like an entry-level TV. Now, our problem gets to be where we start trying to compare features and we start trying to compare design, because that can be preferential. I might care about it, you might not, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. What I will say though is this: when we look at the overall aesthetic, I would say that the U8H makes more sense, and that you can accommodate a sound bar where on the U8G you couldn't, right? However, it's important to note that on the 55-inch specifically, you can't accommodate a normal-sized sound bar. So you are going to have to be limited to one of the smaller, more entry-level sound bars if you want to have more extended sound. And for that, you might just be better off not upgrading at all as far as a sound bar. But if you're serious about getting a sound bar and you don't want like speaker wires and all that stuff, then you're going to have to go up to the 65 or the 75, because those will be able to accommodate it because the footprint will be wider. And unfortunately, there is no adjustable footprint outside of what they give you. So in a nutshell, it's pretty close, but as you can clearly see, the Hisense U8G does a better job. And ultimately speaking, it has more features. So I like that it's one of the few newer TVs that come out that actually add new features versus just a copy and paste of what they gave you last year with nothing new. We see this with pretty much every competitor in this price point, Sony, Samsung, LG, you name them, they're not really giving you new features. They're giving you the same ones they've been selling for a couple of years now, where Hisense is building upon what their offering used to be to make something a little bit newer for you. So at least there's a benefit over the U8G. The black levels, as I've mentioned, I'm not joking, that's going to be crazy. The brightness, same thing, and the clarity as well is just going to be incredible. But if you prefer a wider color paletry, then you are going to want to go over to the Hisense U8G. But that being said, I want to know what you guys think on this. Are you going to get the U8G, save a couple of bucks, or are the benefits that I mentioned kind of what you're looking for on the U8H, and maybe you're just going to pull the trigger on that instead? Maybe the 75-inch size entices you more. Who knows? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, I'll see you guys later.